Bunny, it is great to be with you on this little video chat, and we're going to talk about a course, an exciting 4-week course that you are teaching in the upcoming semester. But before we dive into that, I'd love for those of our viewers who are not familiar with you and some of your background, love to get just a quick sketch about. I guess the question is, what kind of career path or experience has led you to be teaching this course with the Earth and Spirit Center?
Yeah. I have worked for most of my career with populations, worked in social services and education, mostly with adults and youth who struggle and do not find it easy to navigate in this world, and are living with lots of stressors in their lives. And so for the last 35 years, I've worked with a school system primarily with students with emotional and behavioral challenges, and kids living with adversity and stress, in families with adversity and stress who are very dysregulated, and coming to find that learning ways to understand what's going on in your brain and your body due to the stresses of life can be very empowering. And it sort of began my quest to understand the science, the neuroscience of stress and adversity, and more importantly, resilience. When we understand how things work and why we get stressed and how we can combat that, it can be really empowering. So that's where I have sort of turned and focused on this science of stress and understanding how to come out of it in a better place.
Well, and as I was listening to you describe your work, I was thinking, you work with perhaps acute cases of dysregulation, but all of us are dysregulated to some extent. All of us have stress in our lives to some extent, unavoidably so, particularly, I would say, in the last 18 months, 2 years.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, exactly the purpose of this course. Stress is stress. And yes, traumatic stress is one issue that is very challenging to deal with. But our stress response is the same no matter what level of stress we have. And if we have low levels of stress all the time, it's as damaging on our brains and bodies as those traumatic or impactful incidences. So learning how to do that in this time. We live in a culture where we don't pause. We're told to push through, just, suck it up and pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And
while doing four things at once, by the way.
Absolutely. And we don't give ourselves, our bodies, our brains, the opportunity to rest and restore before we hit the next stressor. And that's not what our bodies need. And so by understanding how our bodies are impacted, our health, our well-being, by that continued stress without the opportunity to pause, settle in, rest, and restore our bodies, we stay in chronic stress. And so right now we're all living in that state of collective stress and overload. So finding ways to restore ourselves and give ourselves that regular pause in our lives to rest our brains and bodies helps our well-being in many, many ways.
Yeah, it's interesting as I'm hearing you describe that, I'm realizing that for some, the goal may be to get rid of stress, which is, I think, a completely unrealistic goal, particularly in these times. But what I hear you saying with this word pause coming up again and again is the kind of the cyclicality of stress, that we are made to manage stress. Our biological and our neurological systems are made for that, as long as there's a rhythm to it, as long as we build in these periods of rest and recovery to manage the next thing, as opposed to just always having the stress turned up to 11 and the resilience turned down to 0.
Stress is our friend. Stress can be a good thing. We need stress.
Whoa, say that again.
Well, anyone that has run a race or tried to get away from a bus that was coming at you on the street, or to be honest with you, simply talking with you this morning, makes you a little on edge. And
putting you on edge. Oh no.
That those low levels of stress get your body on alert, help you be ready and prepared and aware of what's going on. But you don't want to stay in that place. They're meant to be temporary. They're meant to get you through those moments and then get back to that baseline space. And so embracing stress can be an okay thing to do. However, we want to be able to leave it behind. And I love what you said. This isn't about getting rid of the stress in our lives. That's an impossibility and an expectation that none of us are going to have. John Kabat-Zinn says, we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to surf. And we are in a state of time where the waves are pretty high right now. We've got lots of waves crashing down on us. If we don't have the skills to navigate those waves, then we're going to get overwhelmed by them. And so practicing mindfulness, understanding the science of stress so that we can find researched practical ways, of which mindfulness is one of them, to manage and navigate, to surf those waves, then we lift ourselves up and have a much healthier sense of well-being in our lives.
Well, if you're stressed by this interview, first of all, you're not showing it all, and so I think you're just living proof and demonstrating that it is possible to manage stress with gracefulness. That's certainly my experience of you over time.
Well, thank you. That's kind.
And it actually gets to a point that I am observing, which is, although you have done a significant amount of research in this area, and you know the science, and you'll share the science in this course, you also come at it from a clinician's perspective, from a practitioner perspective, such that you also, you have a mindfulness practice. You're not just learning about these things or teaching about these things or empowering others, but these are lived realities in your own life, so that you're modeling them too.
And that practice piece is important, because the skills won't be there when you need them if you're not using them regularly when you don't need them. And that's, I think, a huge piece of a mindfulness practice, is that if we want it to make a difference, it has to be something that's just part of what we do all the time.
Right. Okay. So in this course, first of all, it sounds like the audience would be very broad. Anyone who's undergoing any form of stress, which would be, I think, anyone on the planet. Is this a course for beginners? Is this a course for folks who already have an established mindfulness practice, or for both? Who would best benefit?
I think anyone who's curious about the science underlying how our brains and bodies work, and how mindfulness works, why mindfulness is so powerful. So people with a practice might be affirmed in understanding why their practice is powerful and useful to them. And people that are beginners can just put their toes in the water and try some practices that will, and we'll talk about the science in terms of these practices, why they work and why they settle and support your body.
Okay, so regardless of where one is on, say, a mindfulness journey or a stress journey for that matter,
right.
You're offering some, not just scientific lectures, but and background, but
Right.
also very
Right.
practical tools and
Yes,
group practice in the course, right?
absolutely. We'll interaction. The brain requires safety and connection to be in a state of well-being, and so we'll do practices that support both of those things: safety in terms of just being settled and regulated and able to function, and connection is that relational piece that supports everything that we do. So there'll be a lot of practices that support both of those concepts. Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Well, it looks like it's going to be a wonderful and a packed 4-week experience. Again, this is going to be offered this coming spring, starting in April, on April 11th in the evenings from 7 to 8:30 through May 2nd, every Monday evening. And we'll link to the particular course webpage and everything in the body of the email that accompanies this. But folks can find that at earthandspiritcenter.org. And Bunny, I'm very excited about this, and very grateful for you offering us some tools to learn better how to surf.
Thank you. I'm really privileged to work with you all. So thanks for having me.